Hi everybody. So today, Meet the Maker is with Emily Murch in her weaving studio. Thank you so much, Emily, for inviting us here.
Thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate you coming.
That's great. Shall we just start by finding out from you, how did you come to be here?
Sure. I mean, I'm not an artist by training. My background was very academic. I studied law, did a master's in it, taught a bit, then got a job with the Home Office and was a civil servant for 10 years. And then I had my little boy while I was at a point where actually my career in the civil service was going really well, but I was aware of the fact that to make it go well, I was probably being somebody that I'm not completely. And I had no idea what I was going to do next. I took maternity leave, I took a career break. And then the only thing I knew was that I couldn't go back to being a civil servant, so I handed in my notice. Meanwhile, we were living in South Cambridgeshire, in a tiny little village down an unmade road, and I had a dog to walk with a baby in tow, and I found baby wearing, which is where you wear your baby in a sling in order to get out and about hands-free, and I found woven wraps as a way to do that, and then I found people who were hand weaving woven wraps, and I found that community fascinating and really inspiring, and it sort of drew together things that I'd left behind in my childhood and things that I really wanted to explore, and then through that community I had my first chance to sit at a loom, and I was like, oh, I love this is great.
As soon as you say, you go home.
Yeah, well, it was a bit like that. And I've since found out that actually there are weavers in our family, you know, sort of hundreds of years ago. So I don't know, maybe it's a genetic memory. I don't know. But I sat at a loom and just went, oh, this is amazing. It still didn't quite sort of tick all my boxes, I guess, until I found dye work. So what basically happened was it was Christmas of 2019. I bought my first tiny little table loom and started playing around on that using factory dyed yarn, and you know, I liked playing around with it, but I wasn't loving it. Now, lots of the weavers that I'd met were dyeing their own yarn, and I thought dyeing was something that I could never do. It would be really technical, it would be really hard. Now I have a love of chemistry, so I did an A-level in chemistry and had loved it and had thought about studying it. And suddenly I discovered that actually dye work has a lot of elements of things that I'd loved, you know, in my past.
I'm going to interrupt you, say that's really ambitious. I mean, you're learning a completely new craft, and you're not just doing it simple stuff, and you're going right into the dyeing of the book as well.
It was a bit bonkers. I have to give credit to the community that I had found my way into, the baby wearing community, where people are hand making. You know, if people have time to do their research into woven wraps being made for baby wearing, you'll see the incredible artistry in them. And I really wanted to be able to achieve my own version of what I was seeing, which is, I think, the thing that gave me, and actually it was a dear friend who I also bought my first floor loom from secondhand, who really gave me the kick I needed to give it a go. And it took practice, you know. I dyed skeins of yarn where the water would never rinse clear, and I thought, God, you could never wear this because it'd turn you blue. And you know, I definitely had failures. But they are the things that help you to learn, particularly when you're doing something where you teach yourself. I actually paused and thought really hard, do I want to go and do a textile degree or do, you know, some sort of learning around this? But I actually having spent a long time in academia when I was younger, I liked the fact that this was ungoverned and me finding my own way and my own creative path. And I thought, well, I'm going to stick with that. And I'm just going to do trial and error. And that's basically what I did through lockdown, through, you know, the awful 2020 that we all had, into 2021. I was teaching myself to weave and to dye, and to bring the two things together into things that looked how I wanted them to. I did quite a lot of things that did not look how I wanted them to before I managed to get things to look how I wanted them to and learn that process.
So when you chose the route of doing the dyeing, was it just so you could control the colour yourself, or were you interested in colour as an idea?
Colour and effect. So I'm interested in the artistry of that can be achieved. I work like an artist would with an inspiration to start with. That can be anything. It's usually colour driven. It's usually something I see out and about. And then I realised that actually with yarn choice, you can bring in texture to help realise whatever that inspiration is in a more three-dimensional way than a painting. And that was sort of where the dye work came in. It was part of the storytelling, and it was using it to tell a story and using the effects you can get through dyeing things yourself to create stories in cloth. And the thing that I kind of found really lovely was how you could design things that balance on your body in a certain way. So part of my creative process became about exploring how things feel when you wrap them around you. You know, different yarn weights, different yarn textures. And the scarf thing evolved because I loved how things felt. You know, it's almost like a synesthesia when you wrap something around you where somebody's thought about the colour, the texture, you know, all of those different choices that go into making a handwoven product. To then wrap it around you is an incredible sensory experience.
So Emily, I just absolutely love the colour of this shawl. Tell me its story.
So this is based on a little red grouse who flew across the car in front of us when we were driving up on the moor. And the light just caught him as he flew, and it's all the colours that I saw as he flew across in front of us. So I really wanted to capture that delicate feathery feel that a red grouse or holding a bird in your hand would have. So I used a silk wool warp. Silk has that lovely sheen like a feather, and wool just gives it that little bit of fluffy bite, if you like. And then over the top of that I put a tusser silk weft, which is a wild silk weft, which again has that silky sheen but with a little bit of, it might feel a little bit woolly, sort of like that feathery, you know, that feathery texture. And then to complete it I chose a pattern that has a feathery motif in it, just to complete that sort of feathery, delicate feeling. And this is also made with really fine yarn, so there were lots of ends in this particular piece, lots of threads done in a very fine yarn so that it adds to that feeling of delicacy in the hand. And so it's quite a thin piece, which means you can wear it either as a shawl, as I love to do, or if you want to, you could wear it just as a neck scarf because it scrunches up nice and tight and nice and small, and you could have it more as a winter scarf. So this one is based on Van Gogh's Starry Night, and it's another idea. It's a painting I've always adored. It's another idea that I'd had in my head for a long time. The weft, so there are two wefts. This is an overshot piece where you have two wefts, so you have a very fine silk weft that you can't really see, and then the texture for this one I wanted something that felt kind of velvety. You think about a dark starry night, it's got that sort of, you know, in the back of your mind it's got that kind of velvet texture, that soft feel. So the weft for this one is alpaca and silk and wool, which just gives it, I think, a really beautiful velvety soft feel. And when you wrap it around you, it just feels glorious.
It looks absolutely beautiful.
Thank you. This piece is based on, I call it Frozen Edge. It's where the ice meets the ocean. I wove it in the middle of winter, feeling very frosty. And yeah, I just wanted to convey that sense of drop-off that you get at the end of ice into water. So the warp was dyed, one half was dyed in very pale icy colours. Well, actually, in fact, that isn't dyed, that's the natural colour of the yarn, with a little bit of the turquoise through it, down to very deep sea colours on the other side of the warp. And then so because it's water-based, I wanted that watery feel, so I used a silk warp because it's just the closest thing you can get in yarn form to water, really. It's cool, it's You know, it's got that lovely sheen. You can see in my hands, it flows through my hands like water, which is what I love about silk. And then I wanted to take that silk and give it a little bit of icy bite. So I chose a weft that has some cashmere in it, that just gives it that little bit of bite. And I wanted something that felt really kind of gloriously wintry, throwing a big shawl around you. So this piece is enormous. It's about 30 inches wide. And yes, but again, because of the way I weave, you end up with something that does function as a scarf, but in this case would be the most glorious of enormous shawls.
It's just artistry. I can't say how impressed I am. This is beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we need to start looking at these looms and try to work out how you do it.
Let's do it.
Emily, you've now got to explain weaving to a complete numpty, which is me. I've got no idea how it works.
I'll do my best. Most people know more than they think. So weaving, you have a warp which goes that way. So this is the warp here, and over the top of that you put a weft, which is the thing that goes side to side on the shuttle, which is this that you'll see me throwing. I hand dye both my warp and my weft. So as I said before, I spread this warp out on some wallpapering tables like a canvas, and then painted the dye onto it, cooked the warp to set the dye, then rinsed it out and wound it onto the beam over there. You can see where the warp is that's ready to come through to me. Then it gets threaded through. To make a pattern, you have to thread each end in the warp into one of these little, they're called heddles. Each one has a little eye in it, and each end of the warp, this warp has about 400 ends in it. I do warps that have up to 1,000 ends in it. Has to go through one of those tiny little eyes in there. Then each end has to go through a slot in here. This is the reed, and this is what helps position the weft into the cloth as I weave. And then as I weave, I'll advance the cloth and it'll go around onto this beam here and be collected there, which is where I'll take it off from when I've finished weaving.
So how did the contraption work where certain things rise up and down at different times?
So you're doing a pattern, and all of these shafts here are linked up in a pattern order to treadles which are underneath me, and each time I put the weft through, I'm pressing down a different treadle in a pattern order to raise and lower all those ends to create a pattern.
So you know in advance which pedal to do at which stage?
Yes.
Very mathematical.
Yeah, it is. And thankfully I've got a head for numbers, which means that sometimes, and in the case of this quite simple pattern, I can remember the order, but sometimes I'll have a pattern sitting up here and I'll be moving a little magnet down it to tell me what I ought to be doing each time. It just depends on the pattern and how good my memory is on the particular day.
That's fascinating. Let's have a watch of it in play. That's so fascinating, Emily. How did you start selling your work?
So it took me a long time to realise that, or to actually, I guess, to have the confidence that my work was of a quality that I could sell. The confidence came from joining the guild, the League Guild of Weavers, Spinners and Dyers. And then I applied to join Peak District Artisans, which was a suggestion that somebody at the guild had made to me. It felt like an enormous stretch for me at the time. I was absolutely terrified making that application, and I was flabbergasted when they said yes. And that was how I really managed to start selling my work in a way I'm comfortable with. I don't sell online as a rule, and the reason is that hand-woven pieces have such a different texture and balance that I want people to feel them, try them on, fall in love with them. I don't want somebody to think that looks really nice, I'll buy it. get it home, take it out of a box and think, oh no, I don't like that texture, I don't like the way that feels. And really, people can have really surprising reactions to texture and yarn choice.
Teach your skills to anybody else?
I do. So one of the things I realised, having taught myself, I am somebody who's very comfortable teaching myself, but I know from the little bit of university tutoring I did that everybody learns in different ways, and some people really find it much easier to learn in person. It was a natural fit for me. It was almost something I felt more comfortable doing than selling my weaving. So yes, I started taking workshops for the League Guild of Weavers, Spinners and Dyers. So I did a shaft weaving workshop on little table looms, which are a miniature version of this loom and what I started out on. And we also did some workshops on warp dyeing, how to dye, lay a warp out and dye it in the way that I do. I've invested in 4 small teaching looms now that people can borrow when they come to workshops. And it's been really fun actually having people in. And there's nothing I love more than sharing someone's first go at weaving, because almost everybody has a reaction, good or bad. So some people are kind of like, oh gosh, this is a lot of work, isn't it? And other people just take to it like ducks to water and find the joy in it, the kind of mindfulness in it, and absolutely adore it. And some people have come back for more workshops and I've been able to support them in taking the first steps in their weaving careers. That's been lovely.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Emily. It's been a delight talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming to see me.